What's going on, fam? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are out at the pitch with the Under Armour Shadow Elite 2.0. This is going to be an epic play test. I'm excited. It's a beautiful day. It's a little bit windy, so rip to my editor. So it's a little bit windy, but we've got the little dealio on here. This is a football boot that in the initial review I was super positive about because of the way that they've changed this compared to previous generations. Now, I am very excited to see how these are going to perform. I have worn them once or twice, a couple times on natural grass, but this is the first time that I'll be wearing them properly on an artificial ground. Very pumped to get a sense of what they're like. I know a lot of people are saying, hey, the sole plate's super aggressive. Is it going to be okay for the more kind of artificial ground pitches? Well, today we will find out, and of course I will walk you through, as I always do with the play tests, a kind of a, how would you say, moment by moment conversation with you guys about how they fit and should you buy them and kind of what category they fit in, because they're a really interesting product. So let's get them on feet. All right, here we go. So getting them on feet, I do have a pair of WeFoot grip socks, so you can find a link to those in the description box below. They are my favorite grip socks. These happen to be the thin version, so you guys can get your pair 20% off with the code NOAH20. All right, here we go. Getting back in the boots. Very nice. So this is a pair that fits excellently well for me right here in this forefoot area. There is no exo mesh here on the forefoot. It's just the IntelliKnit upper. The exo mesh is sort of this grid-like pattern that starts there and is sort of a darker triangle. And that is the material that I think is going to cause the most lockdown for most players. It'll also cause a little bit of pain and or issues as far as break-in time, I think. So that's something that I'm going to be keeping tabs on today, and of course we'll keep you guys updated with that. So there's the first one. Super nice. Again, I think it wraps my foot really nicely. I think it does a really nice job of getting all the little nooks and crannies here around my ankle area, which is awesome, and it feels pretty grounded so far. But of course, we got to start moving to get that sorted. For those of you who are not familiar with Under Armour's boots, they have this one, which is, of course, as I said in the intro, the clone. Oh, excuse me, not the clone, that's the Magnetico. So they've got the Magnetico Elite 3.0, which is what Trent Alexander-Arnold used to wear before he went over to Adidas to wear the Predator. I think he's definitely, I don't know, I would say he's a Predator player. I think that's fair. But they have the Magnetico Elite 3.0, and then of course this one, which is the Shadow 2.0. So there you go. There is a good look at the boots on feet. Really nice wrapped sensation. I think the sole plate feels good so far. It's a sole plate that's been around Under Armour for a really long time, so that's something that I'll be discussing in today's video. Actually, how good is it? Because it's carbon fiber, does it have a crazy amount of snapback? All that stuff. So let's get into some warm-ups. All right, before we hop into it, this is a top-down shot of the boots. That's how they fit. So as you can see, my feet are pretty wide in this area right here, and so they definitely have quite a bit of flexibility in that IntelliKnit forefoot area, but there is definitely a little bit of bulging on the side. That's to be expected though, because my foot shape right around that area is super wide. So really nice, and size 9 US fits me perfectly, true to size. Straight into the ladder for some warm-up. Get the feet going a little bit. One of the things that the previous generation actually did really well was getting one of the craziest lockdown experiences that I've ever had on a pair of football boots. I mentioned that in a couple different videos that I filmed with those. They were absolutely ridiculous as far as lockdown, and I would say these are a half a step down from those, but far more comfortable, which in my opinion is a perfectly suitable trade-off, because at the end of the day, the comfort is the most important piece. I would say that these are still more aggressive as far as lockdown goes than most other boots on the market, particularly a lot of the speed boots on the market. I just think at this point, a lot of those don't do a very good job at giving you the best possible lockdown experience. And that's not to say that the speed boots on the market aren't pretty good. In fact, I think the majority of them are pretty good. But I would say that because of the way that this boot wraps your foot. And again, we talk about lockdown from the standpoint of, well, okay, what actually makes good lockdown? What makes good lockdown is a really responsive midfoot, a really responsive sole plate, and I don't know, maybe like a good lacing system, I guess, like a long and deep lacing system, which these boots have. I mean, these boots are very, very comfortable. They've got that exo mesh in the midfoot, which does a nice job at wrapping the internal and external parts of your foot, lateral and medial sides of your foot. And so you get a really nice amount of lateral lockdown, which is huge. You've got good grip in the heel area, which is also great. And then you've got the ability for the toe box to be a little bit more free flowing, because that's not a part of the boot that's gonna, excuse me, wind is crazy right now. That's not a part of the boot that's gonna give you the majority of the lockdown, except for in deceleration. So if I'm coming up to the camera and I'm decelling, the thing that's gonna hold my foot into the boot is gonna be the lacing system, which these do a pretty good job at. And I'm fairly certain from Under Armour's perspective as well, these are actually technically agility boots. So as I go through all these cones and stuff, you're gonna get a sense of what they're like to play in. I think the heel is one part of this boot that they've absolutely nailed. The heel area feels absolutely fantastic. It's really comfortable. There's no hot spots. And it's one of those heel areas that is just, oh, fantastic. Surprisingly, the sole plate actually hasn't been super crazy so far. I'm a little bit surprised actually, because I would have thought that this stud pattern would have been pretty aggressive for AG. I mean, this AG pitch is actually quite nice. I think it's a little bit longer than the one in the field behind me. But overall, I do think that the sole plate does a really nice job of gripping into the ground. And then of course, like as you get lateral and forward movement, you have the studs that sit sort of this way as opposed to that way, like chevron studs. And so you get that stopping power both this direction, so I can come up and I can stop on the dime this way, I can stop on a dime this way, and really any angle, which is really, really helpful when you're doing some of any sort of cutting or any sort of like drills or stuff like that. My guess is I'll take the shoes off probably right after this drill. But one of the things that I really like about these boots is that the coating, the synthetic coating on the top of the Intellinet actually does a really nice job of giving you just a tiny bit of grip. It's of course nothing like a GX, it's nothing like a Predator or anything like that, but it just has a little bit of a sticky sensation so that even when it's warm outside, you don't get too much grip, but you still have kind of this textured upper, so that when you are doing, you know, any sort of pushes, drag backs, any sort of stuff like that, where you're manipulating the ball with the upper, not a problem at all. So that's fantastic. We're gonna see how like little footwork drills go. Yeah, nice. Lovely. Turn back around, go through. Wait. Nice. Yeah, I really like these. I think they're super good. What's crazy, something to remember too as well, is this is Under Armour's second iteration of this boot. And so how nuts is it that they've come out with something already really nice as a second generation? And that to me is really impressive. Turn around, come back through. Lovely, lovely. Yeah, great feeling. Let's take them off quick. One of the things that I'm noticing straight away, yep, definitely a little bit of tightness around that midfoot area. So these, as you can see, right in this area, you can see the Exomesh logoing right there. The Exomesh that you can really clearly see in that little triangle piece is basically to give you the most amount of lockdown in the least amount of area space possible. That's at least my interpretation of the way that the boots are designed and built. I have had the pleasure of talking to a few of the design team from Under Armour about these particular boots and about what's coming up next and all that stuff. And it seems to be a running theme with this new generation of Shadow that they really want to accomplish the goal that they set out with this boot, which is like the most agile and most explosive and sort of easiest to do agility stuff in the most simple package possible. And I think for the most part, they've done a really good job of this. I'll talk about the sole plate in a little bit, especially once we get into shooting, because as like a plant and explode type movement, I think that's going to be really interesting with this sole plate. But so far, other than the little bit of soreness and hot spot on the outside where that exo mesh is in the usual spot where most boots for me get a little bit uncomfortable during the break-in process, these are really, really comfortable. Like I would say these are, other than that little bit of soreness on the outside, these are class. Like the intel in it is actually really, really quality, and the feeling of it is super, super nice as well. So that for me is a big, big upside to why you would pick something like the Under Armour Shadow Elite, especially if you're a player who plays a lot on FG surfaces and who really loves to do lots of like really sharp cutting movements. These are definitely a boot I think that would aid you in that. Which, as you guys know, as I've said many times, a boot is not going to make you a better player. That being said, if you are a player who really likes lots of cutting and wants a really secure boot and fits in, I would say, most things, if you have slightly wider feet like I do, I would probably just go try them on to make sure they fit you well. But the overall package of this Shadow Elite 2.0 is pretty hard to argue with. I think this does what a lot of other boot brands try to do, but in a really, really simple and well put together package that seems to be fairly durable as well, which is really, really great. So as I'm slipping them on for the second time, they now that they're a little bit warm, and I've, you guys all know the feeling of boots that have been worn just a little bit so that they have like kind of a, I don't know, they're not like wet or anything, but they definitely have a little bit more give to them. And so that's the sensation I'm getting now, which is great. It's really, really nice. Super, super comfortable. My guess is I'll have to take them off probably one more time in the session, but that's pretty standard for me, other than a few pairs of boots that fit perfectly. Tequila, Furon, GX2, Morelia 2, and maybe one or two other ones, but this is definitely a boot that I'll need just a little bit of break-in time. All right, little midfield figure 8 drill. So this will really test as I come through and do the figure 8s. This will really test the little short, sharp movements that I'm looking for from this boot, and hopefully give me a good indication of what these are like to play at a really, at a really intense pace, which is great. So we'll get going on these ones, and then go around alongside. Yeah, lovely. Little inside the foot. Boom. Nice. Yeah, okay, so one thing I'm noticing right away, sole plate is definitely aggressive. For AG, I would say these are probably a little too aggressive for AG. I'm gonna finish this playtest for sure. But I would say, these are definitely a little bit too aggressive, I reckon. I'm starting to feel it a little bit in my ankle area. As you guys know, with boots, hard to talk and do this at the same time. With boots that are more aggressive and boots that kind of get into the ground really aggressively. So as I plant, my ankle's kind of moving all over the place. And yeah, I would say, for the most part, I do a lot of prehab. I've got pretty strong ankles for the most part. But you can tell almost immediately from an aggressive traction like this, sort of how much that makes a difference compared to, say, an artificial ground surface. So would I recommend playing with these on artificial ground? Probably not. But we're gonna finish this playtest, and then I'll kind of have some final thoughts at the end of the video once I've gotten a little more playtest time in them, plus some of the shooting, which we'll do right now. First little action here is just gonna be like juggling. All I'm gonna do is just take a couple touches up like this, touch, and then my goal is just to bend it in the far post. I'm not trying to shoot quite yet. I just wanna get my groins a little bit warm, and I really wanna test kind of from a little bit more aggressive passing standpoint. Yeah, decent. So from a feel perspective on ball, how are they when you're doing more of a shooting motion like that. Wow, post on post, all right. And so far, really, really nice. I love the continuity of this Intelligent upper. Feels really nice. A little bit off, but we're getting there. And that's one thing that I think boots like this, that's why boots like, say, Vapor 13 a couple of years ago, and you know, GX2, GX1 kind of, but they have like this really consistent touch. GX1 did, but it was a double layer upper, so it was a little less kind of close to the ball feeling. Whereas I feel like GX2 was, and is, incredibly consistent because it's just a one-piece knit upper, where this is very similar to that. One-piece knit upper with that. Nice. With a little bit of that kind of polyurethane coating over the top. Obviously, the GX2 has grip knit and stuff, but it's a fairly similar feeling, I would say, at least in the forefoot area. This boot definitely has less pointiness to it. So there's definitely more volume in this one than there is in the GX2. But from a kind of an overall sensation fit standpoint, I would say they're kind of similar. One thing that this does outside the foot, one thing that this does a little bit better is that midfoot stability, I would say, is definitely class on the Shadow Elite. Other boots that this compares with are, I would say, honestly, they feel more like a control boot, even though they have the sort of the, whatchamacallit, the responsiveness of a speed boot. But for me, it's very much like, the forefoot feels a little bit Tequila-esque, although these feel more substantial than the Tequila in a lot of ways. Ah, man. Come on. And yeah, I don't know. I think for me, it's like a really cool yep, get in. A really cool, like, kind of mold of different feeling boots. It's like a little bit control, but it's got the lockdown of a speed boot. So from a playing experience perspective, a little bit wide. It's really good. And yes, they're pinching my foot on the lateral side a little bit still. Sorry about that wind. But overall, like, striking the ball feels good. Let's actually take them off. Actually, let's go to the other side and then we'll take them off. So for me, then it becomes a question of, damn, dip and swerve action. It becomes a question of, do you buy this? Do you buy a speed boot? Do you buy, like, for me, it's a competition probably between, like, as far as like-minded boots. Nice, wow, I feel like I can knuckle the crap out of a ball with these. Do you buy something like this, or do you buy a Tequila? Do you buy something like this, or a GX? You know, do I think they compete directly with, like, a Vapor? Not really. Like, yeah, kind of, from a technology perspective, but not really, just because they have, I think, a little bit more to offer. Gonna take them off again, just because they're right in that area. They're pinching a little bit. So me, I don't know, man. This is like, that's the tough question, and that's the beauty of, like, trying boots, right? Is, like, figuring out which one fits you the best. Now, okay, this sole plate is absolutely beautiful. I'll take this other one off while I talk to you about the sole plate, the sponsor of today's video. No. The sole plate, I would say, is not as aggressive as it looks. And what I mean by that is the stud pattern looks very aggressive, right? So stud pattern, obviously, you've got these crazy bladed studs in all these different wonky positions. Under Armour says that this is because they've done studies to make sure that there's a stud in every position that you would need it for changing directions. Now, do I believe the marketing jargon? Nah, but is it kind of cool? Yeah. Not suitable for AG, definitely, as my ankles and feet will tell you right now. Not suitable for AG, would absolutely recommend these for FG. I've played with them. I don't know where there's still some dirt left on one of them. They've probably gotten cleaned off, but yeah, totally fine for FG. And this sole plate, so that for me is too flexible for a carbon fiber sole plate. It looks amazing. It feels really good underfoot, I would say, because I don't mind it. Like, for instance, the GX sole plate is about as flexible as this in the forefoot. Good rigidity here through this little, like, I don't know, area in the midfoot. But this, to me, is too flexible for a carbon sole. Like, I want it to go, you know, flex, but I want it to snap back into place. Like, I want it to be difficult for me to do that. And this is like one finger, and I can push like that. So for me, not what they don't perform how they look from a sole plate perspective, but I think this can be improved with either just not doing a carbon sole plate or doing something a little bit more substantial here in the forefoot area. But as you can see, unbelievable softness for the upper material. This Intellinet is really, really quality. The different directions, I know I talked to you guys in the initial review about like the way that they've done the stitching in the different directions. It doesn't really, like, I don't really notice it compared to like a Furon or a GX or a Tequila, as far as like this having a different knit combination or pattern than those do. I would say they provide equally as much sort of zonal stretch materials. But for me, these with this exomesh material provides such an insane lockdown experience. That's why these ones are definitely up there for me as a performance boot, even if, you know, sole plate isn't quite where it needs to be. All right, boots are going on. Last little time. We've just got a little bit of maybe some volleys or some free kicks left. Not much to do from a playtest perspective. I will have more thoughts on these moving forward because I do think these are a really exciting product, despite some of the things I've said about the sole plate and, you know, about maybe some of the tech or the marketing not being like what they say it is. But overall, I'm really impressed with the comfort of these boots. And I would say for a boot that is this comfortable to also be this locked down and this sort of responsive as a football boot is very impressive. And that's where I think the Under Armour Shadow Elite 2.0 does a really good job. So as far as, you know, foot shapes fitting in here, I would say if you're on the sort of the average to narrow side, you'll be perfectly suitable in here. If you have a wider foot shape, especially in the midfoot, I would just be a little bit more cautious at getting into a pair of these. One thing that's for sure though is definitely be careful if you are going to try to wear these on artificial ground, just because I do think they are just too aggressive for that. Get some, maybe a couple of volleys action going. Ooh. And I don't know, man. I just think, you know, like, are they a boot that I'm going to be wearing quite often? Yep, absolutely. Are they going to be top, you know, 3, like game day rotation? Maybe, especially here in Australia, playing mostly on firm ground pitches. So that's a possibility. But here's the thing, if I have a GX in my bag, am I gonna wear those or am I gonna wear these, right? And the answer is probably those. And for me, that's not a bad thing because I'm a huge Phantom head. I really like the Phantom, as you guys probably know. But for me, definitely, lovely. Definitely a good package. Overall, nice football boot. So let's grab a few free kicks. And as I said, because they are so aggressive, shooting free kicks like this, like when I come up to the ball and I plant like that, there is zero give. And so it is quite a bit aggressive, I think, for me. So we'll see how these free kicks go. I'm gonna try not to, you know, knock on wood, break an ankle or anything like that, but okay, good side, but need to lift it a little bit. So that's kind of what I'm feeling. But again, as I said, overall package, really, really nice. Would highly recommend trying a pair, especially if you're on the market for something that's gonna give you Ooh, getting there, a little bit higher. If you want something that's gonna be super responsive, again, aside from kind of that sole plate area, which again, I don't mind because you have boots on the market like the GX and like other boots that have, again, these aren't flimsy. The sole plate isn't flimsy on these, but they aren't, you know, they're not like a even vapor type responsive, which I would say is probably one of the least responsive speed boots on the market with the Air Zoom unit. So that's as far as like snapback goes. I mean, they're definitely responsive as far as like push off because of the Air Zoom, but that's not like snapback of a sole plate, right? All right, here we go. Last free kick here. Try to nail it. Probably the best out of the three. So here's a last little look at the boots. Really, really nice. I think they look great too, honestly. The design of these is really cool. Definitely better than the last generation. Comparatively speaking, if we're talking like, hey, I'm an Under Armour fan, should I buy a discounted pair of the first gen or should I buy the second gen? That's not even a question at this point. I think these are far, far, far superior. But if it's a question about whether you buy these or a GX or a Tequila, my guess is this will come out, well, I know it has because I'm filming this video after, but definitely would recommend watching my top 5 control boots and top 5 speed boots to get a sense of where these stack up. All right, fam, that is going to be it for today's playtest of the Under Armour Shadow Elite 2.0. Hopefully I was able to answer all your questions and, well, actually, maybe that's not true. It was more just like a first take on these as I start to play in them, as I start to break them in. I know I'm, from a scheduling perspective, a little bit behind on the playtest videos. Those are all, I have a whole duffel bag of boots that I'm gonna be ripping through right now that we'll get to. And yeah, hopefully get these out to you guys as soon as possible. Because again, scheduling wise, it's just been chaos and I haven't been able to film anything but indoors and weather and all that crazy crap. So we will definitely, with days like today, be getting you guys more playtest videos, which is super exciting. So definitely stay tuned for that. This is something that I really enjoy doing. Obviously, the playtests are kind of the way that I like to show you guys that these boots are actually being worn, they're actually being tested, and they really are kind of getting put through their paces. And hopefully coming up soon, I've got a kind of, not a partnership necessarily, but I'm joining like a kind of for fun team that's going to be competing at a, you know, like an amateur level. And hopefully we'll get some training footage of me in all the different types of boots as well. So I can throw those in the videos and you guys can get a sense of, you know, watching a proper training session with other people, but in the boots that you guys are wanting to know about, and maybe some follow-up thoughts after. So yeah, that's gonna be it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you did have any specific questions of things that I talked about, things that I mentioned in the video, general overview really quick of the boots. So let's just go over them really quick. Forefoot, super soft, really plush, gonna fit most people. Midfoot, very locked in, but also really soft because of the exposed intel in it. Takes a little bit of time for breaking in for those of us who are a little bit wider footed. Heel area, zero complaints, very, very comfortable, no problems at all. Upper Intellinet lacing system area is great. Do I notice these little rubber elements on the upper? Not really, so it's fine, they're there. It is what it is, I don't really care. Carbon fiber sole plate, very, very nice, very aggressive. Would not recommend for AG surfaces. FG would be totally fine, and not as springy as it looks, but still very planted and very comfortable under feet, which is the biggest thing. So like the video if you got value from it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. As always, be awesome, take care. I'll see you guys in the next video.